Hello and welcome to the Finance Chief podcast, brought to you by BizClick and our sponsors for the series, Amazon Business. This is your go-to podcast for all things finance, but we're looking far beyond the P&L and taking a deep dive into the lives and minds of finance professionals from around the world. We want to know what makes a modern leader tick, how they navigate global volatility, and what drives the person behind the title. If you're ready to move from the spreadsheets to the stories and the insights that shape our industry, you're in the right place. I'm Matt High, Editor-in-Chief of Business Chief, and your host for the series.
Welcome to the Finance Chief podcast, where we're joined by Jody Bhagat, President of North America at Engine by Starling, a cloud-native, SaaS-based core banking platform that allows global financial institutions to build, launch and scale full-scale digital banks. Jody, more than 25 years experience in banking and fintech, so we're joined by a veteran today, which is fantastic. How are you doing? Great to have you with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you, Matt. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. No problem at all. It's an absolute pleasure. Let's get going. I guess for those that don't know you, always good to start with a bit of context. So why don't you begin, I suppose, with a brief overview of your role and responsibilities, and I guess a little more about your experience in banking and finance, just to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. So I'm the president of North America at Engine by Starling. Some of you may know Starling Bank is one of the leading banks, digital banks in the UK. It has over 4.5 million customers, number one customer satisfaction rating. And in my previous life, we used to bring clients to Starling and would ask, why is Starling so distinctive in terms of its capability and its efficacy? And the feedback was always that it's our tech stack. So about 3 years ago, Starling launched Engine as a business, and Engine is a tech stack that powers the bank. And now it's being offered globally to progressive banks, mutuals, and credit unions around the world. And I have the great responsibility and opportunity to lead the North American market for Engine.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Jody. And I know you talked about your previous experience. We'll come on to that. I'm interested in, I guess you have kind of both sides, don't you? Working in banks and now in fintech and tech. But let's take it back to the beginning. Always an interesting point for me, I think, when you look at someone's career and their trajectory. I guess the obvious question is why finance? How did that start for you? How did you kind of get into the industry, and how has your career evolved over that time?
Well, I think like most people, probably it's more serendipitous than planned. Although, it's our responsibility to look back at things retrospectively and make logic and make sense out of it. So one can connect the dots, but typically it's more retrospective. So I found actually I've got three parts of my career. One in banking, where I led. I really specialize more in the digital banking side. One of the big banks in the US. I led the digital and call center team. So it was about 1,000 people, all the non-branch activities in terms of channels.
Sure.
And then secondly, in consulting, I was in a past life at McKinsey, and then thirdly in fintech. And I find that given the way the world is moving, and how versatile one needs to be, that a fusion of experiences and talents actually is a great grounding, whether you had planned to do it or not. It's a really useful grounding. It gives you not only broadens your skill set, but if you're people that have grown up in banking versus grown up in tech versus grown up in consulting, they approach problems differently. And so one's ability to just have some grounding in those areas and have that perspective. And it's so important to be able to really understand people's perspective, to be able to influence or motivate or cajole or influence in some way, that I found this fusion of backgrounds to be really quite valuable.
I think it's really cool. I always love people's personal careers, right? And their journeys. So the obvious question from that is, you look at that fusion, what do you think are the kind of key lessons or experiences you've taken from each of those areas, your banking, your consulting, and now your fintech? I mean, how do they, I guess, come into the melting pot that's Jody, and how do they influence your work today?
So broadly, what I share with anybody who take my advice is really find, which is very few people, but find an environment where you can really excel. And that's actually quite a challenge, because let's say when you're in school, it's hard to be the smartest person in the class. It's only granted to one person.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if you can find an environment
yeah.
where you can really excel, meaning that it brings out the best in you, what gives you the most pleasure, what gives you the most satisfaction
Hmm.
in terms of, and draws on your energy, so that you not just bring motivation, but you bring somewhat of a of a distinct skill set that can really be effective in that kind of environment. I think
Yeah,
that's a challenge really for all of us, whether you're,
sure.
starting out in school or you're
Yeah.
experienced in your career. Um, I'd say the second thing is that the typical graph of as you age, this responsibility to impart wisdom,
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
I think actually should be somewhat flipped, meaning that it's so vital to continue to learn and grow and stay curious, particularly as you become more experienced.
Sure, sure.
And of course, it's useful to give advice and wisdom, but it's I think that the environment that we live in, that you just need to be, if not recreating yourself,
Mm.
certainly redefining yourself
Yeah.
in a way that's useful for you, but also quite impactful for the environment that you're operating in.
Great. And yeah, I guess you've done that over each of those kind of career stages, which we'll come on to. I mean, last question, I suppose, for that kind of context. We've talked a little about your career, but if you look over those various roles and I guess the different areas that you've worked in, how would you say, banking as an industry has evolved broadly and in terms of how it uses technology, for example? And what do you think are the key trends kind of driving that change?
Oh, I mean, banking is it's such a fascinating place to be
Right.
right now. It's
Yeah.
again, if you talk to most people that are in banking, most would say, "Well, I didn't really choose to be in banking."
Right.
But right now, I think banking is a fascinating place to be, and
Hmm.
partly because of the challenges associated with it.
Mm, mm,
If you look at, I looked at some research recently around just the productivity of different industries over the past decade. Banking is the only industry, one of the few industries that actually hasn't increased its productivity over the last decade.
right.
And that
Interesting.
partially, I would attribute that to the technology that powers banks is
Hmm.
sometimes 10, 20, 30 years old or older.
Yeah.
So while there's been significant investment in technology, as there has
Hmm.
been in other industries, there hasn't been the return in terms of productivity.
Okay.
So, I always find that, I mean, of course, it's great to be part of a rocket ship industry, but it's even more interesting to see how you can uh, uh, impact an industry that's, a massive industry like banking, of course, but
Yes. Yeah.
really needs to be modernized in a
Hmm.
significant way. Not just
Hmm.
modernized in terms of tech, but process. Its competition is now much more modern. The expectations of customers is much higher. The traditional moats that have been
Mm.
around banking are starting to evaporate. So it's a very exciting time to be, I'd say, in banking, and I consider banking a very noble profession,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but it's one that does need to be modernized.
This podcast is in partnership with Amazon Business. Amazon Business is your one-stop destination for everything your organization needs. Think of it as the Amazon you already know and love, but specifically re-engineered for the way you work. Amazon Business gives you access to business-only pricing on millions of items and quantity discounts that scale with your growth. It's about spending less time bogged down in those manual tasks and more time on what really matters. So head over to Amazon Business and make the power of Amazon work for you.
Absolutely, and we'll come on to that. I mean, I guess you talked about legacy technology there. Obviously, we're all aware of I suppose the technical debt or the legacy of legacy technologies that are causing challenges. What are some of the kind of main challenges that banks that Engine works with, or if you want to look more broadly, what are the kind of key challenges from that legacy technology when we're talking about the need to modernize?
Yeah, so most banks are really saddled with, as I mentioned, decades old
Sure.
technology on the
Yeah.
one hand. On the other hand, some of the vendors of those technologies have really locked them into
Mm.
platforms which aren't open, meaning they aren't,
Okay.
it's not, you aren't able to easily integrate other third-party best practice solutions. And then you're also, can be you can really be beholden to some of the vendors. And I think that's where banks find themselves today. In fact, an optimistic way to look at it is, and I believe this, which is that there's tremendous creativity inside of banks. The talent is amazing. And in some ways, some of the legacy technology has really inhibited innovation. And
sure.
I would say almost it's put a tax on innovation because it's difficult to identify, here's a solution, a third-party best practice solution we want to integrate to. So in many ways, we are seeking the opportunity to unlock the potential and the creativity that's within banks today by giving them a very modern technology that allows them to unleash their ideas, their creativity, their innovation, both to support customers, but also to support employees as well.
And that's essential, right? Do you think that I guess the evolving kind of customer demands or the evolution of the customer, does it really drive that need to innovate? I mean, customers demanding more and more. How does that impact, I suppose, the race to modernize and to continue to innovate for banks?
It's such a good point, Matt, and it's one of a number of factors. We're well aware of the rising expectations that customers have, really across all industries, but more specifically in banking, even the definition of kind of relationship primacy has changed. So that's one important trend. Another is the breakneck advancements that are happening in technology. It's difficult for a CIO or a chief digital officer to decide what technology should I invest in because they're moving so quickly.
Sure.
Third, you've got a increasing and demanding regulatory regime that's seeking really greater granularity, particularly around operational resilience. Again, this is across industries, but particularly so in banking, which is a critical functionality. And then you've got a wave of M&A activity. So the banks that are weaker performing and have lower don't have strong efficiency ratios are likely also to be acquired. So you've got an existential threat there as well. So as I like to say, I think we'll see greater separation between leaders and laggards moving forward because of all of these trends.
Which I guess is where Engine comes in, or it should at least now give you the opportunity to come in, Jody. I mean, you joined the business in 2025, late last year. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
Why don't you give us an overview of the company, I suppose, how you address some of those modernization challenges and a bit more about what you do for banks?
Yeah, so it's been a fabulous experience, and I've the pleasure of leading the North American market, which is in particular the U.S. market. It's a very competitive industry. You have really big behemoth players that are well funded, well capitalized, and then you've got modern entrants as well. And I'd say a number of entrants that have not been successful. So it's not an easy path, but I love the idea of this challenge. I love the idea of moving an industry forward, taking on some legacy players and trying to displace them, and really creating a different kind of, I'll say, partnership model with banks. We have the benefit of being bank built. So we are both a bank plus operating bank plus a technology platform.
Yeah.
And that indeed is one of the three I'll say three key pillars of how we position ourselves. So the first one is modern technology, which is clearly an advantage. That is cloud native, scalable, fault tolerant by design. Secondly is, since we are a bank built entity, we can promise outcomes from modernization, not just technology, but outcomes around efficiency, around growth, around customer satisfaction. And then thirdly, enabling AI at scale.
Right.
Particularly with the advent of agentic capabilities and the agentic bank of the future. So those are the three key points of positioning. We feel they're very distinctive in the marketplace. And when you enter a very competitive market, you need to be very precise with your positioning, because
Sure. Yeah.
otherwise you sound like you sound like the other legacy players, or you sound like the other new entrants that are also claiming to be modern. So it's very important for you to use positioning, and for us to use positioning to attract customers that are compelled by a solution which says, look, we want to help a progressive bank credit union to modernize.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole set of other banks and credit unions that we're not interested in. Those ones that are, that are just trying to do kind of incremental upgrades.
Yeah.
We're not as excited about them. We really want to attract those that are much more progressive leadership teams that want to take a bolder leap around modernization.
And that's a key difference, isn't it? I know you talk about the difference between an upgrade or a core upgrade and a bank modernization. I'm interested, I guess, in that distinction. Perhaps you can kind of set that out a little more clearly, and why it's so critical for banks to survive, to be looking at that modernization rather than that incremental upgrade, or approaching different parts of their tech stack at different times, and so on.
Yeah, so the core, as you know, is essentially the foundation that runs the bank. It's the ledger and the holder of the product and the customer accounts and product configuration as well. And that's part of the system that's aging within banks. So many banks, even though they don't want to consider a core transformation, they're reluctantly faced with having to do so. Because many of these cores, they're batch-based, non-real time, and again, really hamper the ability for banks to innovate. So in many cases, a management team will say, okay, let's we've got some risks around operational resilience, or we're undertaking some undue risks in terms of even finding the right talent to support this antiquated technology. So they'll anoint the CIO to at least get us to a more modern place. So we get out of some of the issues around risk, and also create some better viability in terms of better connectivity with third-party systems.
Yeah,
that's more of a CIO-led exercise, where in many ways you're trying to limit or mitigate the impact on the rest of the bank. You're trying to get it over with as rapidly as possible, so the bank can get back to operating. So let's call that kind of just a CIO-driven core upgrade, versus a modernization, which is really an entire management team-led exercise.
Right.
Modernization is seeking significant gains in operational efficiency, has a robust growth agenda that they want to reallocate funds to, is determined to improve the customer experience and even improve their risk and control environment. Now, that's a much more ambitious undertaking. But if you are a CEO and you want your management team to be all in, versus your CIO being tasked with upgrading the core, if you want your management team to really sign up for the outcomes, that's really feels much more like a modernization program, where you've got a balanced scorecard of outcomes, and essentially each member of the management team will be responsible for leveraging the technology to achieve their functional outcomes.
Yeah.
So that's what we call a modernization program. And those are really the select set of banks and credit unions that we're seeking. We believe that's a growing market, because more and more institutions will need to modernize really to be able to compete, and even if just to survive.
Which is good for you, Jody. Do you think that that's the case then? I mean, is that modernization, will it just become an essential part of a bank's evolution and journey into the future? I mean, will it come to that point that it's just a critical part of operations for the leadership team?
Yes, we believe that's the case. And there's one of the things we've tried to do, Matt, is to bring some expertise around what are the different approaches in terms of how you might do so. So we've come up with 3 different paths that an FI can take a financial institution can take. So one is, let's call it a digital-led expansion model. So if you're a bank where you may have, you may have a few dozen branches and you operate in one or two states and you want to expand, the way that you expand may be quite different. It'll likely be a digital-led expansion as opposed to using your existing footprint, particularly if you're going to do this organically. So that's a digital-led expansion model.
I see.
The second is what we call a progressive modernization, where you will modernize one part of your business. Let's say you'll take small business and you will modernize that business unit, and then evaluate and consider how you can modernize the rest of the bank subsequently. And the third model, which is the most common model and the slowest path, is what we call hollowing out the core. And this is where you're taking capabilities out of your core. You're essentially keeping it as a dumb ledger, but you're pulling functionality and capabilities out and you're modernizing. Now, our view on that is that this was actually a very practical and pragmatic solution, particularly over the last decade. This is the most common approach. Moving forward, though, our belief is that modernization journeys need to happen in a much more compressed time frame, and you don't have 7 years to modernize your entire tech stack. That's why we're calling into question this third approach, which is the most common approach, and really trying to motivate and have banks and credit unions see that you need to undertake a more accelerated modernization approach, because that's what's really required to compete in the future.
So how will they? It may seem like an obvious question, and I know we talked about some of the challenges the banks face. So how will those banks, those leadership teams know they need to take that journey? What will be the key signs, and what are the steps? We talk about this kind of management-led approach. What are the kind of key steps to initiating that and then working with an engine by Starling, for example, to work through that process?
Yeah, well, there's so many factors now that, and most banks and credit unions see this happening as well. First of all, you've got increasing intensity of competitive rivalry and new entrants. For instance, in throughout Europe, Revolut is a juggernaut. Nubank as well. Both have closing in, I think, around 100 million customers or so. And in the US, you have Chime that's acquired over 9 million customers. They acquired more customers last year than JP Morgan Chase, which is remarkable.
Wow.
These digital challengers are entering the market at an efficiency ratio. Efficiency ratio is essentially the amount of costs it takes for a bank to bring in $1 of revenue. So it's a key efficiency indicator. And a typical mid-tier bank in the US may be at 60%, and these entrants are at 40%. So you can essentially put all of that efficiency towards marketing. And that's why there's such a threat now from the competitive standpoint. And then aside from the competitive rivalry, you've got margin compression as well with many banks, and just the need to create a more efficient platform and a more distinctive experience for customers. So just to put it bluntly, our view is that in the next 3 years, a typical bank needs to improve their efficiency ratio by 5 points. That is a pretty substantial gain. And they need to be more distinctive in terms of the customer experience they're offering to customers, so that they can overserve a target segment. And you want to overserve that segment to win.
I see.
And that's how we're at least being provocative and positing that as a challenge. And if your modernization program isn't going to get you this kind of efficiency gain in the next 3 years, then we would suggest it needs to be reevaluated in terms of how you're approaching it. I think the other factor is that anytime you have, typically you'll see when there's a change in leadership, then there's also a much more openness and willingness to take a
Okay.
bolder approach. New
Right.
CEO, new CIO, or head of retail.
Hmm.
We also find that those are usually then you end up with a much more progressive leadership team as a result.
Yeah. So this is this is a leadership exercise as much and a cultural exercise as much as it is a tech process or a tech exercise. Is that fair?
It really is. It
Yeah.
really is. But it's appealing in a number of ways.
Mm.
Of course, there's an opportunity to improve the performance of the bank.
Yes.
And that of course is the driving factor. But when you look at a modernization program and an undertaking, you can also convey to your colleagues, your employees, that look,
Mm.
this is an opportunity which you don't find very often in a career, maybe a
Mm.
couple of times. And so we all are planning on it being successful. But
Yeah.
regardless of the outcome, you as an individual will end up much better off. You will have experiences that others
Mm.
will will not have had the ability to capture. Going
Mm.
through modernization transformation programs for an individual, ideally they're successful, but even if they're not successful, the
Mm.
learnings that you have and the experiences you gain make you much more valuable as an individual.
Absolutely.
So there's a that cultural piece as well,
Hmm.
where the CEO is really engaging the entire leadership team to take on a bolder ambition, and then the management team is engaging their employees and in some ways inspiring them, saying, capitalize on this opportunity.
Hmm.
It's a great opportunity, not just for the institution, but also for you individually.
Embrace it, essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
embrace it. Yeah. And
Awesome.
if you and then you also look for people that are keen to have that kind of a be engaged in that kind of a program that really
Mm.
demands more of them. When I say demands more of them, meaning demands them to be more versatile, more curious, um, more keen on self-development,
Yeah. Yeah.
and really just being, ability to generate more creativity in terms of developing new solutions.
Great. We talk about embracing technology. I guess we have to ask the obligatory AI question, Jody. Everyone talks about it. I'm sure you get asked about it every day. Where is Engine using AI? I guess to give you the opportunity to talk about what you're doing. But in terms of banks generally and the things we've talked about, where do you think AI and AI technologies will have the most impact now and into the future?
Well, I mean, it's such a fascinating topic. We could spend so much time talking about the societal, the biological
Yeah.
longevity impact, and all of the economic
Hmm.
consequences that come from that. But just to narrow the focus around application of AI, I mean, it's a very exciting space right now.
Hmm.
Um, I'll say as a bank, as a bank or credit union. Um, you really need to think about how can you leverage the capabilities and position yourself to leverage the capabilities so it advances your brand promise, if you will. So I think being quite targeted in terms of the use cases you select is going to be very important.
Hmm.
At the same time, having a platform that'll allow you to do much more than just pilot and explore. Piloting and exploring is quite straightforward,
Yeah.
but the ability to deliver AI solutions that are impactful and do
Hmm.
it at scale and do it in a way that where there's auditability and controls, that's when you need a much more robust platform, not just use cases, but a much more robust platform. So that's clearly how we're positioning Engine
Sure.
to be at a response to that need.
Yeah.
And then Starling Bank is actually one of the leaders around applying AI
Hmm.
in the
Of
bank. In
course.
fact,
Yeah.
is one of the leaders in the UK in bringing generative AI solutions
Mm.
in the hands of customers, which is quite progressive as well. So we're in a fascinating place. We think that the there will be more and more agentic use cases. We will soon
Hmm.
see that agentic solutions occurring on the side of banks as well as on the side of how
Yeah.
customers are doing their banking as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
again, an agent needs similar kinds of capabilities as a human does. It just does it more efficiently. So it
True.
still
Yeah.
needs a view of customer and operational data. It needs to be able to take action like a human would. So that means it needs granular and rich
Yeah.
APIs to be able to allow it to act. And then it needs auditability and controls because it all needs to be monitored very closely. So it's very exciting what we're seeing in terms of the evolution, both on the banking side and on the customer side. I'll give you an example on the customer side. It's very exciting just to think about. Many customers will leave excess money in their checking. And partially because, not everybody's great at managing their money, but even if you're good at managing your money, you may not have the time or the wherewithal to optimize.
Sure.
Well, in the future, you'll likely have an agent doing that money movement and optimizing for you. And that will change the economics of banking. Just that one exercise, that one agent that's acting on behalf of customers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Will change the economics and the income statement for banks. So there's some very consequential impacts coming, and not just from a technology standpoint, but from a customer experience standpoint, and from an economic case as well.
Great. What do you think? I know we're covering a lot of ground, Jody. We've talked about customer experience a few times. I'm always interested. From your perspective and the technology that you offer, what do you think really defines that good or that great customer experience for a bank thinking about making these changes and investing in technology? Where is that focus when it comes to really serving the customer?
Yeah. So Matt, there's a set of foundational capabilities, which of course every bank needs to do. Our belief, though, is that, and this is where the creating a more distinctive experience for your target segment. This is where this comes in, which is that each bank should really identify as part of their brand promise, where do they want to really distinguish themselves? Perhaps that's around helping small businesses, really understanding small businesses well, and showing that we have tailored solution that meets your particular industry. Or it's around helping customers do a much better job in terms of how they manage their money and manage their cash flows more effectively, and giving them more confidence where they can anticipate cash flow issues. Each bank and credit union should determine where do they want to go deep and really be known in their customer base. And the technology should allow you to bring that to life. And that's where we see some of the technology, it creates this more degree of sameness, and it limits your ability to really drive innovation. I was really proud to see that we held our inaugural customer forum.
Okay, great.
And we had global banks from Australia, New Zealand, Europe, Canada attend, and they were all very open to sharing information because they're all going through a modernization journey. They're all trying to lead in their markets.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And one of the banks shared that every month they are delivering innovative customer-facing solutions in the market. And that's almost unheard of in terms of having the capability to deliver new solutions every month into the marketplace. So that's what a modern technology really can enable you to do. And that's why I'm so excited about how you can unlock the creativity and unleash the potential of banks and credit unions.
It's an exciting future. Jody, we've whizzed through that. It's been a fascinating conversation. Two final questions. I guess to round up the conversation, if you're a bank or a credit union now and you're a CIO, a CEO, a member of that leadership team that we talked about being so important, what's the one takeaway from this conversation that you should really think about when it comes to your tech stack and that modernization process?
So, I know your audience here is partly made up of CFOs as well. And
it is.
I would perhaps, of course, CFOs need to be on top of the key metrics associated with both costs and revenues. I would say that one of the metrics I would emphasize, or the theme of metrics, is around speed.
Okay.
So in addition to looking at something like what percentage of your budget, your IT budget is going to value-added activities, business value generating activities versus maintenance. I think that's an important, metric. But the other two, I would say, are much more around speed, and I think a CFO should really challenge the business around some of these outcomes, which is what's the time frame to recognize a customer need and bring a customer-facing solution to market? How rapidly can we do that? Because I think that's a key indicator of the agility and adaptiveness of a bank. And then the second is similar, a speed-related metric, which is from a risk and fraud standpoint. What is the cycle time to recognize an issue, let's say an emerging risk topology, to evaluate different hypotheses and to ameliorate and scale a solution and put it back into the market to address it. So I would encourage the CFOs in the audience to really challenge the business around speed-related metrics.
Okay.
Because that's the environment that we're coming to, which is everything is compressed, everything is accelerated, things are moving fast. And those institutions and entities that can adapt rather than having a really robust 3-year strategy that is super prescriptive. How can you adapt by recognizing, signals, whether they're market signals you need to innovate for customers, or they're operational risk or fraud signals and you need to ameliorate those conditions.
Great. What a great takeaway. I think, look, we'll give you the floor almost for a final question. I know we talked about you joined the company to kind of spur that growth in the US and Canada. I mean, from your perspective and from Engine by Starling perspective, what are the plans for the future? What are the kind of core areas of focus for you and the team at the moment, Jody?
Well, first priority is to help the customers that we have to make sure that they achieve success. So we're so pleased. We've signed a partnership, a long-term agreement with Tangerine in Canada. It's part of Scotiabank. And so the high priority in North America is to make sure that they're successful. And then in parallel with that, I'll say being a recognized product and thought leader in the market for those banks that are seeking to modernize, and being the partner that they need to be successful. I think it's really important for an institution like ours to be quite selective around our customers, so that just like they're going to be selective with us, because you're really, your success, you're deeply vested in terms of their success, and it's it's very satisfying when it occurs. And I think that's it's a great challenge and great opportunity for any institution, which is select your customers wisely and make sure that they're successful both as an enterprise, and also the individuals that you work with are able to see their career paths really grow and develop as well.
Great. Jody, what a way to end. Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Finance Chief podcast. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Pleasure to have you. We'll be back with another Finance Chief podcast soon. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Finance Chief podcast, brought to you by BizClick and our partners at Amazon Business. I'm Matt High, Editor-in-Chief of Business Chief. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the life of finance professionals from around the world, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep looking beyond the numbers, and we'll see you on the next episode.